Welcome to my YouTube channel. This is a continuation of the Laravel CBT application that we built as a web-based application that we started. This is part 3 of the tutorial. On the tutorial, we've seen how the database is being constructed, and we've seen all our migrations being prepared. We've seen our controller, and shortly we also had a tutorial on how to import Excel into database. I want to apologize because this tutorial came a bit late. The bottleneck was as a result of other project that came up. They have to quickly fix the project. And today we want to see how we can create something like this on our project. Select the question from database and load the option together with the question, and how users can interact with the questions. So follow me as I explain the code and the logic behind this code. The first thing that I'm going to be explaining is the database structure. We have our migrations created. We have the subjects, we have the questions, we have the options, and we have the answers too. Then we have the users and the database. That is, these are the participants that would be writing the questions. So the first thing we have here is the subject. Now we have the subject. Inside our migration, we have subject has the ID, the course code, the course title, and the timestamp. So we have these parameters in our database. And also, if we access our database from here, we're going to see let me access our phpMyAdmin. phpMyAdmin. Okay, while we wait for this to load. So we have the subject, then also for every subject, there are questions attached to them. So we have, this is the questions migration. We have the ID of the question. Then we have the value, that is the question itself. Then we have the subject ID, that is the table subject is related to question. So with this subject ID, so when you have subject ID, it has a relationship with it's related, is connecting the table question with the subject. So we are storing subject ID into questions. Anytime we are submitting a question, that question would naturally belong to a subject. And this is the reference, the foreign subject ID, which is referencing ID of the subject. Also, we have the options table. Options table has a direct relationship with the question. So we have the ID, the value, that is the option itself. Then we have the Boolean value, that is correct column, which is telling us the status of the question. If the question is correct, it's going to be 1, and if it's not correct, if the option is correct, it's going to be 1, and if it is not correct, it's going to be 0. Then we have the question ID. Question ID is relating the options to the question. So for every options that we have, it's an option belongs to a question. Then the question ID is referencing question ID on the questions table. So also we have answers ID. Answers table. Answers table relates directly with, it has direct relationship with the users table and the options table. So for every answer that we submit, that the user submitted, it's going to capture the user's ID, that is person that submitted it, and the option that the user selected. So that's just our model. Then we have our migration. Our migration, we also have, as we have the migration, we have a model, we have the users model, we have subject, we have now something about subjects that we have relationship. Subject is related directly with the question. So yeah, a subject has many questions. So we have to keep this in mind. And also we have our questions. Our questions model, it relates directly with the subject. So we have questions belong to subjects, and also question has many options. So this can help us to easily pick what is in our database and fetch the data easily. So then we have an option. Option also is related directly with the questions and the answer. So every option that we select belongs to a question, and every option has one answer, that is one selected answer. So the option has one answer, that is the answers table. When you select a question, when you select an option, from the option you submit, that option goes to the answers table, and it's just one option that the user can select, and that's why we are having one answers. So from here, just one thing that is that was not mentioned before, it's our collections. There is what we call collection, and the advantage of using collection in our work is to be able to make use of models. That is, want to have relate one or two, three models together. So once we have the model, we can easily interact with them, and without necessarily going to our controller, our model would work as if we are using our collections would work as if we are using our model. So you can read up documentations on model collections and how to use them. So here I'm implementing this to collection. So you can check up this tutorial on Excel upload, my YouTube channel. You can look for this tutorial, Excel upload. It is extensively explained on how to upload Excel in database. So you're going to install a package, and it's just quite straightforward. So here on this tutorial, I explain how to install, how to upload Excel into database. So I have Excel file, you want to upload it. Now, the one peculiar thing about this is that I have Excel sheet of this format. I have, this is the questions column. So in these questions, I have the questions. This is the subject code. This is the question itself. These are the options, and it is correct column. So when you pick subject, the subject goes to, it will check the column of the questions and tell us if it exists or not. If it exists, then the subject would update the questions table. And once the questions table is uploaded, then it moves to the options table. Options table, the value of the options will be uploaded, and it will also upload the status, this correct status, whether correct or incorrect. Then this, we can only have one correct option among the options. We're expected to have just one option that is correct. Also, we should be able to upload our Excel file here. And when we upload, the value comes here. Now let's see the database. This is how our database is structured. We have, sorry, that's not it. We have this. So we have the subject. The first thing we have is the subject, the list of subjects that we have, or let's say the course code. Then we have the questions that belongs to this. So these are the questions, and you can see that the subject ID is also stored along. Then we have the options. So the option also carries the questions ID, and its correct status is there. So for every question, for example, look at 76, 76, 76. So all the question, these three options belongs to question 76. So when you are fetching question 76, question 76, you can easily pick all the options that belongs to it and display it just as we have here. Just as we have here. So this question is picking this question is picking all this. So it depends on the number of options that you put here. It does not really matter the length of the options. So just one option is correct. Once you select, then you fetch, and it will be displayed here. So now that is how our database is being structured. I'm going to clear it and explain how this is done so that for users to see and for us to implement in our code. And if there's any question, we can easily indicate so that we can solve it together. And aside that, I'm going to make these available in a Git repository so that anybody can just pull the code and check and modify it to suit their project. Now, let's check the code and see how it's been implemented. Now, the first thing that we did in the code is to upload our Excel sheet. Now, let's try that and see how Excel is being uploaded. Now, I'm going to clear the content of the questions that we have. So I have to install that. So we have the list of questions. So these are the questions. I'm going to clear it off. Let me delete them. Oh, sorry, I won't be able to delete this because I didn't cascade it. Yes, I need to flag out. So let's start from the options. Yes. So we can delete all the options. And delete all the options. And delete all the options. And delete all the questions. I want to advise you, I want to encourage you, I want to enjoin you to subscribe to my YouTube channel by clicking on the subscribe button. Thank you, it means so much to me. I thank you for watching. Now we've cleared our database, and when we come here, instead of having this view, we're going to have an empty view. Let's see, let's refresh, see that our options are gone, our views are gone. It's a bit slow. Wow, you can see there's nothing in the database again. It's already empty. And I want to push these questions into our database. Then let me add one more question. Let's say C# is not a C# is a language. It's a question. Now, let's say the options are maybe yes, and the answer is, the status of the answer is 0. Yes, it is. And the answer of this is 1. I don't know. The value of this is 0. Okay. let's leave it at 3. We just want to be able to know if our Excel is working out. So we have 3 questions. I just added one more. Now I want to get this Excel into our database. How do we move this into our database? Now I'm going to show you how this is done. Let me download this Excel file. Let me download the Excel file. Download the Excel file. Now, good. You can prepare it in any Excel form. I just choose to use my own Google because I don't have Excel on my system. I don't have Microsoft package on my system. That's why I'm using my Google Doc to do the Excel work. Now, on your own system, you can prepare it in your Excel format. You don't need to use CSV or anything. Just prepare and use. Now, I want to upload now. So I'll come here and pick the Excel file that I upload. Now let me go to my download and see this is my fresh Excel. So I'm going to browse it. I'm going to import into my database. Don't mind me, there's no status information. It's just upload and that's it. So you can come in and check. Has it been uploaded? Yes, it's been uploaded. So you can see C# is a programming language. Maybe yes, I don't know. So you've seen that the information is already here. How does the system understand how to do this, how to automatically push this into the database without any problem? Now you can see that this has just 3 options and this has 4 options. This question has 4 options. This has 4 options, and why this has 3. Now let's look at the code and see how this is achieved. Now I told you about the collection. So we have the question option class that implements tool collection. So I want you to read up on tool collection. The package has been installed, and I want you to check up this tutorial and see how you can implement Laravel Excel, import Excel to database table with Laravel on my YouTube channel. You can quickly check it out to see how this can be achieved in your project. So this is just a tutorial, just by the way, that helps users to upload information into the database. Now, the value has been pushed into the database and we can see it here. We can also visualize it directly from, we can check it directly from here and see our list of questions. These are the questions, and we also have the options. We have options, so we can see our question subject 80, 80, 80 has just 3 options here. So if you check question that has 80, this one has just 3 options in the options table. So that's how it's related. And also if you have this check the subject, the idea of the subject where it is 1, it has question subject 111. So all the questions belong to the ME course code. So that's how we link our tables together. Now look at the page. Now once let's start from the view. How do we upload? Now we have the view import questions view. Now how do we import question? We have the questions, import question. Now this is where we drag our file. It's just a form, and this is the form. So the form goes to the route import question, and the method is by posting. So we have to add this because it's a file. So then we understand why this is there. So we have input type, the name is file control. And once that is done, a button is there that tells the user to import. So once this is clicked, this form will be submitted into the database and it goes directly into the import question. So it goes directly to the import question. So when you import questions in our route, let me close this up. Too many open. Okay. Now let's go to our route and see. Now, when you have import questions, it comes here and locate our controller, goes to the import questions. So import questions controller that we have here, import question controller. So we have a controller for import question. Sorry, we have questions controller. So we use this controller. Don't mind me, I was referencing another thing. So we have this controller that the file comes to. So once the form is picked and we submit, the first thing that happens is that this displays the view. Now question, import question. So this displays the view. View. We have our questions, import questions. So we have this are view that submits the form through this route, import question. So, and that comes to this place. That comes to this place. This displays the view. Then we have another method there. This method import questions. So once it is submitted, we're going to initialize our model that is available. There's a collection model that we have created and we're going to import it. So it will be imported, then the file that is submitted would come here directly and it would automatically implement what is available in this import option. So let's see how this is achieved. Now, our import option, we have a collection import option. So import option collection is available here. We have import option, the collection. So this is where the upload is achieved. Now we have the collection that implements to collect, and we have this function collection that is available. So inside our collections, we are taking a parameter that is called coming, the collections of things that are coming. Then we have the row of things that are coming. We want to collect an Excel sheet that has multiple rows. So inside our row, we're going to look through all the available rows in the Excel sheet, and we're going to be checking if they are available, if the content is there or not. For example, look at this. For each row that exists in the Excel, we now want to see if subject postcode in the Excel row in the first row, we want to check the first column. For this is the first column, we want to see if it exists. If it exists, then it proceeds to this code. If it does not exist, it exits this if else and just go back with a response information. So we have this subject where course code and this, then we're going to fetch. If it exists and it enters there, then we're going to fetch it. We're going to check that first row in our Excel that we push. What I mean is this is the first column. This is our first row, the first column. We're going to check it. If something is here, then that means something is in this Excel sheet. So we're going to check it. Then if it exists, then we're going to initialize our subject, then check from the subject table. In the subject table, you want to know if, okay, what we actually did is that the subject table in our database, we want to ask, does this thing Excel, do we have the name ME101 in our database? as a subject. If it does not exist, then we can proceed with this code because the subject must first exist in the table. And if it exists in the table, then we are going to proceed into the code. What do I mean by that? If the subject ME11 does not exist, then we cannot upload questions for it. So that is why this one has to be subject code, followed by the questions and the options in the other columns. So this will first check if the course code in the first column exists in our subject table. So if it exists, then it enters into this code. Now, where it exists, we're going to fetch the whole content of that subject in our database and keep it in this subject ID. So this subject is going to be keeping this variable is going to be keeping everything that is fetched. So, and it's an object anyway. So once we have this value available here, then we can proceed to our questions table. This is our questions table. So here we want to have question table initialized. We're going to initialize our table. Then we're going to look for questions ID. The first thing, remember in our questions table, we have to store the subject ID. So we are going to be storing subject ID now questions table. So how do I get the questions ID? So the questions ID that is available here, we're going to access it through this. So we have subject, we're going to accept subject hyphen greater than this. I know we understand what this means. So we're going to pick ID, store it in subject, and we're going to have questions subject ID. Then we're going to store it there because in our questions table that we initialize there, we have subject ID. Then we're going to store the question itself, that is the value. We're going to store it here. Then this is going to be picking from the Excel. Since we have accessed Excel, the first column, which starts from 0, the next one is the question, which is 1. So we're going to be storing the value here. Then we're going to check, we're going to quickly save it in this function. And while we are saving, we are still checking if it's been performed. If that function, I mean the question save is performed, then we move to the next table, which is the options table. Once we have checked the subject and we are sure that the question has been saved, the next thing is to save the options. And we are sure in our Excel sheet that this is the first column, which is the subject code. Then this is the question itself, the value of the question. Then the remaining are the options. So we have the option 1. Then the status of this option is the next thing here. So we want to know, is this the correct option from the list of options? If it's the correct option, then the value that the user puts here is 1. Then if the next option is not correct, the value is going to be 0. The next one, the value is going to be 0. So that's how we have it. Then the next question, good, is the value 0. So the users can fill up this. I mean, the teachers are going to be the one using this Excel format to manage their work. So now the next thing we're going to be doing is to enter this value, the options. We need to pay attention here so that we don't mix it up. Now look at the options. This is in our programming, in our logical view, we have Excel starts reading from column 0. This is column 0, this is column 1, this is column 2, this is column 2, this is column 3, 4, 5. So our option starts from column 2. So we are going to initialize our reading such that we'll start, I'm creating this for loop, and the first item here is going to be 2. Then I'm going to be looping through the length of my row, that is all the columns in my row. And don't forget that I've used up the first 2. So I'm subtracting 2 from it. So the whole length, that the number of counts that Excel is going to have is going to minus subtract 2 because the 2 has been subtracted. So the remaining are my options. And that's what I have in my options table. And you remember in our database structure, in our options table, we have the options, we have the options value, we have the is correct status, and we have, now let's go to the option and see. So we have the value, we have the is correct status, we have the questions ID. So these are the three things that we store from the database. So we're going to be having the first one, we're going to be counting from 2, we're going to skip the first 2 columns which has been used, the subject and the questions, then the options that we are going to start from the options count. So, and since the first 2 has been used, I'm subtracting 2 from the count, then I have to keep adding 2. So I'm going to increment the value of x by 2, and that's why I'm having this. Why am I having this is because once you pick the first option, the next column is just status of that option. So the next option you are picking is just +2. You are going to be adding 2 to the first one. So if the first one is 3, for example, the next one is going to be 5, because 4 is going to be for the status of that option, while the next one is going to be 5, then followed by 7, followed by 9. So that's how it's going to be skipping. So what I mean is this: if you are reading from this Excel, for example, we're reading from, this is 0, this is 0, this is 1, and this is 2. So we're reading from option 2 now. The next option is going to be this. So if this is 2, that means the next option is 4. That is 2, 3, 4. So this is going to be 2. This is going to be 4. This is going to be 6. This is going to be 8. So that's how you keep reading the Excel sheet until you get to the end. So we're going to be having the first Excel. We are reading from 2. We're checking if it is not null. And if it is not null, we have the question ID from our questions list. We can easily access the questions ID from here. We pass the questions ID here, then options value. Our options value, that is the value of the options that we have in our database. So you can say, okay, options value, this is the value. So we'll get the value from the Excel, so which is also in the 2. Then is correct is going to be that index that we are +1. So if the questions option, if you have our option, this is the option which is on index 2, then its correct value is going to be in 2 + 1, that's on 3. So we're going to be picking 1 plus this to get the options, and that's why we are having this. 1 plus this is going to give us 3. Then we're going to save it, and once it is saved, we are going to be having is correct saved as x plus 1, and we're going to save it, and once it is saved, then the Excel sheet will look through all the available questions in the Excel sheet and save it. So once it is saved, then the Excel sheet has been saved in our database. So that's it. And the last thing that we did in that controller is to now return all the questions in the database. Well, this is not structured yet. This would naturally, as we are proceeding in the tutorial, we're going to be indicating what subject do we actually want. So because if you have more than one subject, then all the question will still be fetched. So we don't want that to happen. But for the time being, we are going to be having a show question. So show question will fetch all the questions database. Then we're going to return it into question.view questions. So let's check that and see how it's been structured. Question.view questions, that's what we have here. So we've returned an object called question question hyphen option. This is it. So inside our question hyphen option, we have access to all the questions that is filled and all the options attached to the question, because in our model with related questions and options together, so we can easily get the options. Now look at now view. This is the object sent, so we can access our questions. So I'm looping through, I'm passing everything inside form. So this is the form. So the first thing I did was to initialize just a counter. I'm also using this hide, and I have array. The reason why I'm using this array is because I want my questions to have like a notation of A, B, C, question, option A, option B, option C. This is what I mean. I want to have A, B, C base, A, B, C base, so that the users know what is actually selecting. So back to the code, we have ABC. I assume that this will not be exhausted. It can also be added. You can add more if you so want. It is an array. I can always look through it. So my form starts here, and I'm passing everything inside the table. There's a bootstrap table. So now for each question, what I sent in our question, then we start counting. The first question will have 1, and that is why I passed the high, which is initially 1 here. So I'm passing it here. It's going to be like a number for my questions, and that's what we have here. That's what we have here. Number 1, you can see that's what we have here. Also, we have the value, that is the question value itself, that we have actually, we are picking from the questions, this object. So questions value, I remember in my questions table in the database, I have questions. So we have the value for the question that is also there in the database. So I can pick the value for the question, and it should be available for me here. So you can see it here also, that the value of the question is available here. That's what we are seeing. So also we have, I now need to look through the object sent again. That is, now from the question, I have options available. So for every question that I'm fetching here, there are available options that are related with it. So I'm going to be using the object of this question. I will look through it, called an option. I remember in my model, I have relationship. The relationship between questions and options. So I'm going to have this. So which belongs to question. Question has many options. So I'm going to call this method options that is created because it has many, question has many options. So when I call that when I call this option on the questions that I fetch, and I'm assessing the content through this, so the value of all the options will be available in another for each. So in my for each, I'm now assessing the content of the array. This content of the array is just to look through my array here. This array, I want it to show me A, B, C. Now let me change this to capital so that at least it will be better in view. To be better in view. Say F. I don't expect question to reach H, but if it does, fine. And if you have more than H, you can come here to increment. So I'm going to be looping through the array. I remember we have I already initialized at 0 because our array starts counting from 0. So the first one is going to be here. So for each option, then the option, now look at this form. I have this, the check button form, bootstrap. So you can just read up the documentation on instant input. So, and the type is radio. Remember the radio button. So the name is, I'm using the name of the question, that is the question ID, to name it, so that for every option, I'm going to have the same name for it. Naturally, if we are grouping the text radio, they must have unique name. And if it's not dynamically generated, there's going to be conflict and there's going to be problem. So that's why I'm using the ID of the question to name it, so that it will naturally capture a unique name for them. So you can see you can only select one because these three are grouped together. So the value of the options are also showing here. So the value of the option is just the ID. That's what will be submitted into the database. Then in our label, we have the options value itself, and that's what we have in our database here, the options value. So we have the value for the options, the ID, the value of it, and it's correct. So it's correct, it's not coming out. We're not using it anyway, because users can easily inspect our code and see if the options are correct or not, but we don't need that here, and that has been taken care of. So in our next tutorial, what we'll be looking at is how do we submit this into database? How do we capture the value and send the value into the database? That's what we're going to be looking at. So for now, the user can select any of these, click submit, and it goes directly into the database. So then down here, we are incrementing our counter for array, so that the first item to pick the A, while the second will pick the B, on and on. And for our numbering, so at the end of the day, for every question, once we are done with the question, the counter for this array would drop down to 0. Then for the next question, to pick again. So that's how this is done. Then we have our submit button. So once submit button is clicked, it's going to be submitting into, we have not actually implemented, but it's going to be submitting through this action. So we're going to create our model. We're going to be creating our routes through which this question will be submitted. That's going to be the next thing in the tutorial. Then once it is submitted, we're going to be marking. How do we mark this? That's going to be part of the next tutorial. I hope you understand this tutorial. I'm going to make it available on the GitHub. And if you have any question, you can easily indicate. I will appreciate your subscription to this YouTube channel. Let's review this code together. If there's anything that you think can be added to make it better, and if there's anything that you're suggesting that maybe we can also do to improve the code, or if there's anything that is not clear, can you let me know in the comments below? Let me quickly run through the code once again and see how it works. So this is the list of questions. Let's refresh because we've changed something. So let's quickly refresh and see. So I can see now I have capital A, B, C, D, and on and on and on like that. The beautiful thing about this is that you don't, on our database, all you have to do is, on our Excel sheet, the user needs to just prepare the Excel like this, and everything will be taken care of in the back end. So you don't need Excel to be having a fixed number of questions. So you can easily create any dynamic size of your row, and the system still naturally captures it. So if there is anything you think can be done to improve this Excel, maybe any questions, please kindly let me know in the comments below. And once user is done, you can easily click submit, and this goes to the database. So I'm going to be uploading the next tutorial in a couple of days, probably tomorrow. It's going to be available. Now look at it. You can easily subscribe to my YouTube channel. I appreciate it a lot. Thank you for watching.